Hi, my name is Moriel, and this is the oral presentation for my listening project. When I first started this class, I was thinking of listening in a much more straightforward way. I assumed it involved paying attention to someone else while they spoke and responding in a way that communicated they had been heard and that you understood them. Listening is this, but it's also so much more. In a nutshell, listening involves our ears, our minds, and our hearts. Studies show that people perceive being listened to through specific mannerisms and gestures. Because the act of listening and being listened to is actually synergistic, it's important that the person listening does in fact communicate listening properly to the person they are listening to. Most commonly, making time to be with the other person, setting aside distractions, showing empathy and curiosity through physical and verbal expressions, and caring enough to remember and follow up on conversations communicates listening in a meaningful way. We have all probably had experiences where we have either felt listened to or not felt listened to. I know that when my husband takes time to be present with me, puts away distraction, shows empathy and care through supportive behaviors, and puts effort into understanding what I am trying to communicate, I feel listened to. Conversely, when I'm trying to talk to someone and they're very distracted and they seem to be misunderstanding me a lot, I do not feel listened to. When I examine myself as a listener, I realize that I have many weaknesses. I tend to be distracted by so many things, either in my own head or in my external environment, which takes away my ability to be mindful with others. I am also quick to interpret communication with my own biases and assumptions. For me, this means I am not listening fully and openly, but listening impatiently and with an agenda to respond as quickly as possible. I also really struggle to put in the right kind of effort, like asking questions. I prefer when others jump into the conversation and share whatever they think is interesting or helpful, and when there's silence, I tend to fill the space with my own words. Realizing that others may appreciate being asked questions of and being invited into conversation in this way is an important part of my growth as a listener. Finally, I tend to prejudge others and jump to conclusions about what they are trying to say or the perspective that they're coming from. I need to slow down big time and just be more present in the moment with them. For my listening project, I asked a young mom who is new to our church if she would let me spend this time listening to her. She comes from a very difficult background, and I know she wants to be known and cared about, but struggles to communicate and have the ability to interact in more meaningful ways when we are at church on Sunday. My primary goal was to just give her time, to be present with her, and try to communicate the fact I cared about her and desired to listen to whatever she might want to share. I asked her if she would want to get coffee, and we decided to go to Panera because of the more spacious and comfortable environment. We ended up talking for over 2 hours, and even though the conversation stayed on a more surface level than what I was expecting, I realized that what she shared was what she felt comfortable sharing and was meaningful to her in its own way. In preparation for our time together, I set aside distractions like my phone and making sure that my family knew that I would not be available, and blocked out my afternoon so that I wouldn't be impatient to wrap up our time. I also tried to be very open-minded and open-ended in how I interacted with her. I did ask questions when there was too much of a pause in the conversation because I did not want her to feel like she was on the spot and required to come up with all the content. But in general, I let her fully direct the conversation and talk about what she was most interested or comfortable with sharing. I tried to be aware of my body language and verbal reactions and how she would interpret them. Although even though a part of me was focused on wanting her to interpret my actions as listening, I wanted my heart to be in the right place most of all. Listening isn't just about learning the right signals to give, but it's about growing in empathy and care for another and expanding our ability to demonstrate it. This requires setting aside one's own agenda and focusing on what it means to love the other. The people we interact with may not always be our first choice for friends or companions, but being more fully present with them through mindful listening, even if it's just for 5 minutes, may show them love that they need. I want to grow in my ability to give to others, not for my own self-gain, but to be able to reflect Christ more sincerely. Learning about how to communicate listening and practicing listening more mindfully is important to me as a Christian, as a wife, as a mother, and as a friend. Ironically, in order to finish this project, I did have to tell several of my children that I could not listen to them at this time. Sometimes relationship requires that kind of communication too. Thank you for listening to me and for giving me your feedback.